And on This Week in Juggling, we have the great Antoine Wright, who is showing off his skills. How long can you go, Antoine, and can you talk and juggle at the same time?
Yeah, I can talk and juggle at the same time. Let's
And
see how far we can take
throw a
it.
chainsaw in there.
Go ahead, LaRosa, who's next to him on my segment. That was Antoine Wright, who is a fine man from Mobile Ministry Magazine. Good evening, sir.
Hey, sir. How's it going?
And then we've got LaRosa. This is the Theotek podcast, by the way. I failed to say that off the top, and we're starting off tonight. And we've got our full complement of hosts. And so, LaRosa, good evening from Olive Tree Bible Software, and out on the West Coast, living in the past.
Something like that. But,
yeah. How's life 3 hours behind us?
I'm sleepy.
I'm sure. Well, wait a minute. No, you would be sleepier if you were 3 hours ahead of us, wouldn't you?
No, but it gets dark a whole lot sooner.
Okay. And
or maybe he didn't have his afternoon nap.
And that, by the way, is Rick Mansfield, who is from thislamp.com.
It's a .com.
.com. Yeah, and is in the Middle West, sort of the country.
Middle West?
Well, it's
even across the Mississippi yet.
It's Kentucky.
Kentucky is south of Indiana, which is Midwest.
Kentucky's its own universe.
Yeah, it really is. But having lived the first half of my life in Louisiana, I was born in Louisiana, I consider Kentucky Yankee territory, no matter what.
Well, you moved between two different alternate universes, from Louisiana to Kentucky.
That's exactly right.
And from the Northeast, that was Wes Allen. He's actually a New Jersey guy. And
No. Philly guy.
Philly guy.
Philly guy. Hey, claiming East Philadelphia when you're in New Jersey is the right thing to do.
All right. Well, we are welcoming all of you to the Theotek podcast. We're glad that if you are joining us tonight, we're glad you're doing so. A lot of you join us after the fact by watching on YouTube or listening through iTunes or your podcast app. And those are two great ways to do so. You can find us at theotek.com. We talk about church and Bible technology. And actually, a lot of time we just talk about general technology, but we do so maybe with often a Christian perspective. And that's kind of what we're going to do a little bit tonight. And that is to kick things off. A few weeks ago, I was proud and excited to show off my Samsung Galaxy Note phone. And it never burned up in my hand, nor did it start a fire.
Show your
in
hands.
my house, my car, my office, my bag, anywhere. In fact, it never really got hot, to be quite honest with you. And that's because mine said made in China on the back. The rumor was that those were supposedly made in China were fine. But I dutifully returned mine and got a replacement. But it turns out now there's something wrong with the replacements. And LaRosa, tell us what's going on and why people should not any longer take my recommendation to go out and get a Samsung Galaxy Note, if they even could.
Yeah, so what happened was the first batch of Samsung Note 7s that came out, there were some in the batch that were had bad batteries or whatever, and they were causing the phone to catch fire or explode or do whatever it did. And so there were numbers of cases of those. And so Samsung did its recall and said, send us your Note 7 and we'll replace it, either directly through Samsung or through your carrier. But now that the replacement devices have gone out, the same thing has started happening with some of the replacement devices. So some of the replacements have started to catch fire and explode. And so Samsung has completely halted production of the Note 7. They're saying if you have one, power it down. If you excuse me, if you have it through one of the major carriers, so like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, take it back to the carrier, because all those carriers will take the phone back and give you a different phone, whatever you want, or you can get a box from Samsung to send it back to them. And so, yeah, if you have a Note 7,
a fireproof box.
Yes, a fireproof box
that comes with gloves.
I think that is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah. So yeah, if you have a Note 7, get rid of it.
If
for
I
your
had
own
one,
safety.
if I had one, I would send off for the box, the fireproof box with the gloves, and then I would never send it back. That would be like a complete set. I'd keep the phone, I'd keep the fireproof box and the gloves, and that thing will probably sell for $100,000 10 years from now.
I think
will not sell for $100,000. I think you'll owe $10,000 if you keep that.
you're not allowed to sell them on eBay, so I'm not sure where you would sell it, but somewhere.
That would be an interesting collector's item to.
I think so.
Collector's item.
So how in the world could this even happen?
Oh, that's easy. That's quality control 101.
Yep.
They wanted to rush it out before the iPhone 7 came out.
That's what we think. We don't know that.
iPhone 7 will not have anything. I really think that's what it was. And the terrible thing about it is that phone's awesome.
Yeah.
So,
the Note 7 is really nice.
It was honestly a very nice phone, except for that one issue. It was a beautiful phone.
Except for the fact that it might light you on fire, it's great.
Yeah.
Except they have to evacuate planes.
That's true. In fact, that's one of the guys that his burned up was apparently on an airplane, and he was told to turn it off. I think he had just turned it off and began to put it in his pocket, and then noticed smoke emanating from his pants.
and I assume they had the no smoking lights on the plane.
I'm sure.
And then, of course, there's the Babylon Bee article.
What's the Babylon Bee say? They're always good for a laugh.
Oh, there's a man that thought he was feeling the burning of the spirit within his heart.
I saw that.
But no, it was just his phone in his front pocket.
Okay. Tell us what the Babylon Bee is in case people don't.
Yes, the Babylon Bee is a Christian satire website. So it is not real. Anything you read on there is not true, but it's just good Christian humor, making fun of ourselves.
No,
as soon as you say Babylon Bee, the headline Babylon Bee, you should do two things. Number one, you should smile because it's about to be funny, probably 8 out of 10 times. And number two, remember, this is not true.
And it's babylonbee.com.
Yeah, God doesn't laugh. You guys are heathens. There's no laughter of God in the Bible.
Psalm 2 says differently.
You can't say there's humor.
It says, he who sits in heaven laughs.
There's no humor.
Well, so, this is, by the way, the Babylon Bee. I haven't seen the article, but it's you really should check it out and subscribe to it in your RSS feed or like it on Facebook. That's how I read it, and it's always pretty funny. So just, I don't want to belabor this thing too much, except if you own a Samsung Galaxy Note 7, take it back.
Or hold on to it. Sell it 10 years from now.
Yeah, don't do what Rick said. Take it back.
Please don't do that. And
isn't your Palm Pilot worth nothing that you still have, Rick?
Yeah, I got it right here. I'm waiting one day.
I'll give you $5 for it, Rick.
Okay, sold.
If you have a Galaxy Note 7, it will kill you. Send it back. Just send it back now.
Yeah, I don't know what's more astonishingly dire, the warnings from the governors in the Southeast or websites talking about the Samsung Galaxy Note 7. My governor just today basically said, get out of your home in eastern North Carolina, because if you're not going to kill yourself, you're going to kill one of my disaster response people.
So here's a legitimate question. If you're a person who likes to use a stylus with your smartphone, I mean, what are the options out there? We were talking about this today. Samsung has done, they did some really nice things about having that stylus. It was incorporated into the OS, better than like the Apple Pencil on iOS. We were talking about better than the Surface and the Surface Pen. I mean, you could use it throughout the whole thing. What do you do now if you are really into that? What do you do?
You go back to the Note 5. Last year's model.
No, you do not. You go to the LG G5 model that has the stylus. There's
the
a
LG
G4 and they have a G4 and a G5 model that have a stylus, and Verizon sells it, and I can't remember if it was Sprint or one of their MVNOs that also sells it. But that would be your route.
Is it fairly comparable, like in processor capability? Camera's always an important thing.
The camera's not as good because Samsung makes cameras and LG borrows them.
I see.
It's otherwise it's LG's version of a Note.
Should you just go ahead and trade it in for a Pixel? until the
no.
the Note 8 comes out?
No. The best trade for a Note right now would probably be the LaRosa's a Note 5, the S7 Edge, or an iPhone 7.
Maybe Samsung will pull a Microsoft, and the next model will be called the Note 10.
Nah, they're gonna call it. They're not gonna call it. They're gonna use Note anymore.
Note's done.
That's a shame.
I think one of two things is going to happen with the Note. They're either going to just totally discontinue the brand itself and maybe come up with something, the S7 Pro, it has
the 8.
The S8 Pro, you get the S8, the S8 Edge, and the S8 Pro, or they'll just make the S8 Edge, discontinue that and get the S8 Pro with a stylus or something like that. Or they're going to, they've got a lot of marketing bucks. They're just going to pump a ton of marketing bucks and, show Samsung Galaxy Note 8s in, cooling off fire. And no, they won't put fire in it. But like putting it, dumping it in your ice and your drink, and it gets so cold that the water freezes because it's definitely not hot anymore.
They're going to go with a biblical analogy. You saying they're so instead of destroying the world by fire of a Note, they're going to come back and destroy it by flood. Is that what you're
something
saying?
I don't know. I really think they'll get rid of the brand and.
But yeah, either way, this is a serious financial impact to Samsung. Having discontinued the Note 7 line, they're losing $18 billion.
And then,
they're not going to lose that much. That's projected.
Well, if they really have guts,
they'll lose $1 billion.
If they really have guts, they should name the next model the Samsung Galaxy Fire.
Amazon might have a problem with that.
Embrace it.
Yeah.
You think that's absolutely ridiculous, and it sounds absolutely ridiculous, but if they can somehow get the branding right, and that would be, sometimes
what Samsung needs to do is just sell lighters. That's all they need to do.
Amazon
instead of selling phones, they need to sell cases with lighters attached. That's all they need to do. That's all. Cases with lighters, and then call that the Galaxy Fire, and boom, you got it.
But you do ask an important question, Rick, about there really isn't a generation
there's not
alternative for the stylus. What I would say, having used a lot of different kinds of phones, to get a good stylus experience, in my opinion, the best stylus experience is to get a Donit, go to ADONIT, and get one of their really great fine tip stylus options, and get a I hate to say this, but get an Apple iPhone 7 Plus.
But it's not going to be as integrated as it was on the Note 7. They had all kinds of things you could do.
Well, hold up. Didn't Honor? Wasn't there a Huawei device that also came with a stylus? Wasn't one of the Honor models, the Honor 8 or something like that came with a stylus?
There was something, but it's not this generation.
Okay.
Let me find Huawei's website. I haven't reviewed that. I've reviewed the two last Honor phones, the Honor 8 and the P8 Lite. But I believe you're right that there was or is a something.
Yeah.
That has
Huawei would be good. Would be apt to take on that bound, since LG doesn't seem to, or at least not latest in the last 6 to 12 months kind of thing.
Well, I don't want us to go too much longer on this, except, again, my recommendation is to get a Jot, an Adonit Jot stylus, and get a 7 Plus right now. I've gone back and forth over the last week about what you holding up there. The pencil? Yeah, that's just too big for some of us. I want.
You guys have big hands and a big phone. How does this become too big?
Look at your tip.
I don't like the point. I don't like the tip.
Look at your tip. Look at the tip of that thing. Look at the tip.
Well,
that tip is huge.
Oh, well, I never had one, but I still,
I can't see your face in the screen because of the big honking tip on your stylus.
I feel for the people who really like them, though, and I know people who really like them because, like I said, there's really nothing comparable to the integration they had with the OS on any other platform, or even on the Android platform.
Yeah, the Huawei device that has a stylus is not a phone; it's a tablet.
Your
Gotcha.
tablet.
So
I
it's
guess
not.
everybody's got to wait for
phone.
Microsoft's announcement in a few weeks to see if a Microsoft Surface Phone has a stylus.
They're not going to announce a Surface Phone in a few weeks.
Well, even if they did, I don't believe that it would be.
Good.
I don't think it'll have a stylus to it because
If they do a Surface Phone, it won't be this year.
Yeah.
Poor
Well-
Microsoft. They can figure it out.
Along with burning up phones, sometimes the internet is burning up with other things, terrible rumors and lies and falsehoods. And I want to bring this up tonight just because over the last week, I found myself, there was one particular day last week, I found myself dispelling all kinds of crazy internet rumors. And sadly, the people who were propagating these rumors, even when I gave clear evidence that they were false, still believed them. So what do you do if you're on Facebook and there you see a post that says Hillary Clinton is an alien from the outer space, and there's proof because Bill Clinton had a test reveal, I mean, you know what I'm talking about, some crazy lunatic rumor out there. Or there's some rumor that says that Donald Trump was on a bus with Billy Bush and said all kinds of wild stuff, and you want to dispel that false.
Oh, that actually is not a rumor,
oh no, that one was true. I'm sorry.
I could give you a classic example, and when I mean classic, I mean it.
Go for it.
Place a few years ago, before we had Facebook to put nonsense on, we used to send it by email. And so one thing you'll notice, you don't get as many emails with the nonsense from, Aunt Margaret or whatever, like you used to. But, I won't name the name of the school and I won't name any individuals, but I was working at a Christian institution, and the secretary to the head of the school sent out this email about children who had read Harry Potter and had joined the Church of Satan. And now there was a thing on The Onion that did that as a spoof, but then this email went around that treated it as if it was true, and so the secretary sent this not only to all the faculty, but to the parents as well, and it was so incredulous. I can't remember the details now, but I mean, like the Church of Satan had like over 200,000 new members, something just crazy like that, and so. I immediately, one of the sources that I will probably talk about tonight, I looked it up on Snopes or somewhere like that, and that showed where it came from, where it was, and so I sent it to her. I sent her the link, and because I'll tell you what I used to do with this kind of stuff that came into emails. I used to do reply alls and said, no, this isn't true, and then I kind of thought, well, that's probably not too nice. But what I did to her is what I had started doing when this stuff was so big in emails. I sent her the link and I said, if you want to send out a retraction, here's the link to where it debunks this. Now she never sent it out, sadly, but her response to me was, well, how am I supposed to know what's real and what's not?
Rick, that's what I used to hear all the time is, well, it sounded awful, so I figured I'd better forward it and let someone else figure out if it was true or not.
Yeah, there's a guy on Facebook that's a friend of mine, and he posts all this stuff, and the sites that they come from are very irreputable. And there was one today. It was political, and I'm gonna remain very apolitical on our podcast tonight. But it was political in nature, and I thought this just doesn't sound. I mean, granted, we're in a political season where crazy things are happening, but this one just absolutely sounded like it wasn't true, and so. I started to say something. In fact, I did look it up. I spent some time looking it up. It wasn't real, but I ended up not even saying anything to him because when I've confronted him before on this kind of stuff, he says, well, kind of what you're saying, Wes. He'll say, well, maybe not all of this stuff is true, but I feel like I just need to put it out there and let everyone decide for themselves.
Yeah, it's Fox News. Woohoo!
This is why this is my favorite comic. That right there.
XKB.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right.
But you know, to
And
me,
there was one this last week that just went out too, Rick. This was a new one. A lot of times people complain that this is always the conservatives doing it, but you've seen stuff with like
I see it
Occupy
all the time.
Democrats and everything going the whole way. And you know, the last one that came out this last week was Donald Trump to eliminate 490,000 teaching jobs.
Yeah.
And you just look at it and going, well, first off, huh? And then you look at it and you realize what the source of the material is, and you're going, this is the most bogus thing on the planet. It was like an offhanded thing. But teachers are all now sharing this around going,
Oh, sure.
Trump wants to get rid of all of us.
And here's the big problem, you know, for the nature of our podcast, you know, when we're talking about relation to the church. When you send something out that's not true, you're bearing false witness. I mean, this is a violation of one of the Big Ten. And you know, and it's one thing to say, oh, I didn't know. I really thought this was true. I don't think there's any excuse for saying, well, I'm going to just let people decide what's real and what's not. No, I don't think you should do that. But if you find out that it is not true, I think you need to own up to it and say, hey, this is not true. I was wrong. I see.
Own
very few
up
people
to it.
doing that.
Accountability.
Yeah,
What?
exactly.
I actually have seen people do that, which makes
I've seen people do it,
always
but
feel
it seems to be rare.
Yeah. And I think part of the issue with this, Rick, is not even the fact that people are sharing this, but the level of manipulation that's being done to where, and this is where Kevin came up with the idea, but we were talking about it because in that thread that he was talking about on Facebook, he pointed out, well, here's the details on Snopes, and this is just false. And people were like, not only were they refusing not to believe the facts of the case, they were basically discrediting Snopes. Well, that's just owned by a bunch of liberals and they're awful and I'd never listen to them in a million years. And you're going, huh? It's like, going, wait a minute. So
yeah, we're in this era where
going,
people won't read something if it comes from particular sources.
But the reason they discredited Snopes by feeding into this into this paranoia against a subset of political ideology that they don't like, which wasn't even accurate to talk about Snopes, but because it got labeled with that, they just did, and they kept on spreading it back. And it's weird because this rumor that Snopes is like owned by this wacko liberal organization started back in 2008, and it's still just basically accepted as common gospel by a lot of people, and it's bizarre. So how do you teach people in an era where they're just bitter, angry, and desperate, and they're going to hang on to their lives no matter what?
That may be two separate issues.
Yeah, I mean, there's serious issues.
So hold on, you guys are the guys who are pastors. When you guys are teaching, and not preaching, but when you're specifically teaching about the scriptures, and you're saying, hey, listen, this is what the scripture says here. There's historical fact to back up, this context that does this, and this here. There's usually something implied, by your posture, by the fact that you're teaching it, by your status, that says that you are an authority on the subject and you are using other authorities on similar subjects to validate the thing that you are saying. Would that be mostly accurate?
Yeah.
Say that again.
So when you're teaching, you usually use somebody who's also accurate in their subject area. When you're teaching, for example, history of the scriptures, you usually use you use the reference of somebody who's reputable, and your reputation plus their reputation makes people, for lack of better terms, believe what you're saying.
What you're saying is these are not my numbers, they're the numbers of someone who knows what they're talking about.
Right.
No, I think you're asking, do we make a conscious effort to try to find reputable sources for our content, our support material, or our facts, or our...
Yeah. But I think what people are missing...
I consciously make that effort. And when I see something, I don't know why, I'm not bragging, but I have this, I don't know, sort of thing that goes off. Every once in a while, I'll see something. It looks credible. But I think, yeah, this might be fishy. And I'll look it up, and 9 out of 10 times it's false. One of those, you're talking about teaching. I was on preachingtoday.com, and they have an illustration database. And one of the things I like about them is it's keyed to both topics and scripture verses, and it's new. In fact, they ask you, send us new stuff, we'll pay you for it. And so, if you've got a good story that is real and accurate, and you can tie it to some topics and some scriptures, send it to them. You'll get $25, $50, depending on the value of the story. Anyway, so I'm on there, and I don't remember why I was looking for this, but I found this series of pictures that was sent around the internet, and it's basically like a crane trying to get a car out of the water, and you see the crane falls in. So then they bring a bigger one to get the car out, and guess what happens to the bigger one? It falls in. Well, this is all fake. But Preaching Today had it as real. Now, the reason I'm bringing it up and saying their name, because I don't want to embarrass them, is I sent them a link to this. This is Snopes.com, and they not only did they take it out, but they paid me for finding a fake story in their database. And so that's why I very much respect preachingtoday.com. I don't use those illustration databases a lot, but every once in a while I'm sort of stumped, can't come up with anything, and so I'll go there and get a look. And this, they're trying really hard to be credible, honest, and so that's why I use them. When it comes to, there's a lot of falsehood about, background of culture and things like that. And you have to be real careful about it. Just because you heard, some preacher, say it doesn't mean it's true. So you always gonna need to sort of look this up. And you don't do that on Snopes.com. They don't have a lot of that kind of stuff. So you need to look it up through Bible dictionaries and, commentaries and that sort of thing, and see if you can find another source. I guess the journalistic model is make sure there's confirmation. You got it from one source, find it from another, right?
Yeah.
But this is one we talked about. How do you dispel some of these rumors? This is probably the best known one, isn't it? Snopes. I mean, that's kind of the first one I go to.
Yeah, that's usually the first one I go to.
And the rumor that you said, Wes, was that the people who started this, they said, first of all, it's just two guys in their house, or a man and a wife in their house, and they're a bunch of former flaming liberals. And so they're not credible because they always dispel the rumors about the liberals, but they always confirm the rumors about the conservatives. Well, apparently, Urban Legends is another one. Let me show you. Urban Legends is on about.com, which I'm not a big fan of about.com, but I am a big fan of Urban Legends .about.com. And the competitor, who probably would love to put Snopes out of business, confirmed that is a rumor, that Snopes founders were actually formerly registered Republicans, now registered independents. Well, that's me.
Well, the wife's actually a Canadian citizen.
Was what?
So the wife's a Canadian citizen, so she's not anything. But the husband always just described himself as apolitical. Snopes had done research that not Snopes, about.com did research that basically found his only registration was back in 2000 with the party, and it was Republican.
Yeah.
So now he's registered independent. So
I mean, Urban Legends would love to make Snopes look foolish, and so that's why I think that's pretty credible. If they're saying no, this rumor about our competitor is false, you can trust them.
It's interesting because in the emails that were going around, they were recommending people go to Urban Legends, which was really, and they were just like, guys, thanks, but no. Or no, excuse me, they were sending people to Truth or Fiction, not Urban Legends.
Okay.
And what is interesting is sometimes these sites will get caught in a cycle of kind of validating one another because they'll use each other as references. which they do tend to admit. But I thought that Urban Legends and Truth or Fiction both, did a very good job going. There's like, guys, there's really nothing to this at all, and I thought that was very good.
Now, this is one, Truth or Fiction, I'm not as familiar with. This looks like it was created with a publisher, Microsoft publisher.
Yep.
A 1999 website.
Yeah.
It looks like front page.
Yeah.
You can believe it. They have no time for a real web developer. You should believe them.
Well, again, those are three we've mentioned: Snopes, urbanlegends.about.com, Truth or Fiction, and then Wes, you mentioned this one, factcheck.org. This is more about political stuff than it is about internet rumors. Although, some of these internet rumors are political, right?
Well, and you know what I did today? When I came across, like I said, it was one of the most outrageous things I've seen on Facebook in a long time. Believe it or not, that's saying a lot. But it was about one of the political candidates, and I'm not even going to repeat it because I don't want to give any life to this rumor. But one of the things that I did to check it out was I went to news.google.com, which is an aggregate of different news stories. They've got they've got different sections, but you can do in the search, and it will only search news articles. And so, because my thought was, if this is true, there will be other sources reporting on this, and there were none, which told me that this particular extreme political site had just made this thing up.
Yeah. Now, there's a time where you need to be careful about that. Every once in a while, you get a source that is so close to the story, that the news people haven't had a chance to get it out.
That's true.
Let me share my story. A few weeks ago, there was the gas line break in Alabama, right? And that was on a Friday, I believe it was. My wife calls me from school and says, "You need to go fill up the car. We've got a secretary here at school," I think it was a secretary, whose husband works in the oil company that owns this gas line or something like that. Forgive me if I get my details wrong about it. Essentially what she said was, go get the car filled up. Gas is about to go fly through the roof, and you're about to run out of gas this weekend. And I was like, really? Okay. So first thing I did is I went to the internet. I couldn't find anything on, as you said, Google News. I went to Twitter. Often things will hit Twitter before it hits news sites. I found nothing on it. And so then I said, well, let me go to Snopes.com. And I, because I didn't hear it on a thing. I heard it from my wife, but she heard it from someone else. But I was like, that's just not true. There's no information anywhere about it. That's probably false. And so I called my wife back and I said, there's no news about it. It's not on TV. It's not on the internet. It's just, there's no way that that's true. And the truth is, this wife of this guy who works for the company, was telling her, go get gas in the car, because he knew before the word had even gotten out to anyone. And so I should have done like I should almost always do when my wife tells me what to do. I should have said, yes, dear, and done it. Now, I did eventually go get some and didn't have much trouble. But anyway, I could have gotten gas for about 5 cents less than I did if I had listened to her. So that's rare that something like that will happen, but we have to.
Well, and you actually had an inside source.
Right.
So.
Well, you got to be able to. So, all right, Kevin, what you bring up that story is a different type of validation. So, relational validation for the things that we hear is a little bit different than, associative validation. And I'm being really generous with my wording, but a friend of a friend has. There's a certain level of trust that we always place to people that are very close to us. And those people that are close to us have, a certain level of trust that they place in people that's in their respective social stream. And generally speaking, minus, the fact that wives always tell their husbands the truth kind of thing. We always make those value judgments, and we should make those value judgments. I mean, it's not to say that you shouldn't trust your wife. You should trust your wife. But you did the part of, all right, my wife is liable to say something because she's been around stories like this before, have the same trust in that relationship that she does. And so you went to validate her trust with another source, but the sources that you could touch weren't as close to the material as her sources. And so our relationships, when we're trying to validate a story or validate something else, we have to make sure that, if it's relational, that somebody's trying to validate something, that we get as close to the source of that relationship as possible. If it's associative, it's a news report that somebody said, then we get as close to the association to that news report. If WikiLeaks posts something and Snopes doesn't have anything about it, well, I shouldn't expect Snopes to disprove WikiLeaks, because those two are not going to be pointed at the same source of information. In the same regard, if my best friend says something on Facebook and the other best friend says something on Instagram, because of the context of the relationship, I should be able to trust, or in the validity of that relationship, that I can use one to validate the other. That's terms is how we validate our relationships with one another, but based on that kind of communication.
Let me share these 5 tips. Rick, you found this article at ChristianityToday.com, which, by the way, is a good Christian news source, in my opinion.
Yeah, mine too.
And it talks about, it's entitled 5 Tips for Spotting Fake News. And that's essentially what we're talking about, right? How not to embarrass yourself or enable internet trolls. And you scroll down here quickly, it says, check the source. Okay. Well, we joked about the Babylon Bee.
Are you serious?
A lot of people.
That very first sentence needs to be smacked.
What's the first thing?
Yeah, that's
be wary of stories linked to .ru and .co. Come on.
That's probably not fair, but anyway, the Babylon Bee is a good source for satire and humor. It's not a good source for news, and occasionally people have gotten themselves fooled by the Babylon Bee and think it's true. Because it looks like it's from a newspaper site. So check your sources. That's a good answer. Yeah, I think this is a terrible idea, actually. .ru or .co? Well, where's .co?
.co is, well, it's open domain, but it's regardless.
Obviously, no one's Russia. I love the second paragraph, though. That's only one sentence. Did you see what it says there?
If it includes the words Obama and end times. I don't know. That is funny, but you're right. Check the source, and then the second one was what we've been kind of talking about, isn't it? Keep a mental list of fake news and satire websites. That's like the Babylon Bee.
You don't need a mental list. Whosis.com, man. Check the domain registrar.
Be slow to anger. That's some of these incite you to anger, because it seems like one of the problems, I think, Wes, you were talking about this earlier, some of these rumors play into our preconceived prejudices. Yeah, I'm a very conservative guy, okay? I'm libertarian leaning. I just don't like the social liberalism of libertarianism. And so when I see things about, Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama or, liberal politicians, I want it to be true if it makes them look bad. That's just my prejudice. Okay, I want it to be true if it makes them look bad, but I also don't want to look like an idiot by saying that Hillary Clinton is actually the child of a Satanist or whatever crazy rumor might be.
Her father cleaned drapes.
Her father cleaned drapes. That's right. So check. Keep your anger in check. The other thing, it says Snopes is your friend, and that's the other thing we've been talking about. Snopes, about.com, the urban legends, fact or fiction. No, truth or fiction is what it's called, right? Fact-check.org.
Truth or fiction.
And then wait for the whole story. That's a big one right there. And there's a lot of this, people are passing around rumors that are actually dangerous rumors. I mean, literally life and death dangerous, because they're not getting the whole story. That's a very sad thing that's going on in our culture and in our country today. And so wait for the whole story to come out. In other words, just kind of be slow, right?
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah.
And Kevin, because I mentioned the level of manipulation earlier that's going on, but the damage this does, not only to the witness of the church, but to the actual people in the church, like what it does to people's souls, is diabolical. And there, we had a woman here at our church who was older. She was living down at one of the local retirement homes. Her request, this thing she got in the mail from this like psycho former chaplain from the Navy. And I don't use the word psycho lightly. That, you know, Obama had arrested like 6,000 and was ready to put them all to death. And she was utterly convinced this was true. And this is awful, and we can't allow this to happen. And you could not, for the life of you, convince her that, you know, this is made up. Someone's really using you. No, 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 no. They sent me a letter. This is true. That it has to be true because he's from. And we showed her the background of this individual and, you know, the type of antics that he's been doing, and nothing would go through. I mean, this damaged her soul. And basically all the letters always went to her were like, this is happening and it's awful, send me money. And it's evil. I don't know, there's just no other way to put it. It's just plain flat out evil with these different things you're doing. And the fact that we give into it so easily is just disturbing.
Well, that, you know, what you described, though, is somebody putting more trust in the medium than the message. What invariably happens is that we trust certain means of communication more than we trust others. You know, I trust, you know, my man Walter Cronkite or Peter Jennings from ABC News to tell me the news is real before, you know, the guy who was actually videotaping the news tells me that this is happening. And that's a very scary place to be. And as we age and our communities age into different media streams, we should be mindful of that the method that they receive communication adds to the validity that they have, as well as the message itself.
Yeah. And I think as Christians too, we just need to be mindful that we need to be seekers of truth. And the scriptures tell us to be wise. We're not to bear false witness. And we need to keep all these things in mind, especially when these things are just constantly bombarding us, that we need to go in and fact check and make sure that is actually true before we start sharing things, no matter what it is.
Well, that's
like I said, it's false witness.
After the fact, that's what you do after the fact. I mean, before the fact, you know, when you see something that, when your alarm kind of goes off, like I said, my feeler rises and I go, it just doesn't sound right. Of course, as a parent, I've tried really hard to teach my sons to be not cynical, but to have healthy skepticism, I think is the better phrase for it. To always ask questions, you know, where did you get that from? How do you know that's true? Why do you believe that? Why, you know, but what happens for those of us who are often putting out information? We're podcasters, or we're preachers, or we're Sunday school teachers. We're often putting out this information, and we, you know, giving it our best shot, but yet we find out I was wrong. For example, my friends that posted stuff on Facebook that was wrong, or Rick, in your example of the secretary who sent out the email. You know, what if someone had used that picture from preaching today? What's the responsibility that we have as the one who disseminated falsehood? How do we handle that? Number one, from the pulpit, if it happens, weeks later we find out it's false. How do I handle that?
Well, you know, I think on one level, if you have opportunity, you need to let people know, hey, this was not true. You know, have you sent an email, or have you posted it, or whatever, to say that's not. And you know, if it's on Facebook, you know, you can even go back and edit that original post and say, hey, guys, this wasn't true. You can post something secondarily. You know, I used to use a preaching illustration. Anytime that I preached or taught about Jonah, that I had gotten from an illustration book. You know, you're talking about this illustration website. This was back, you know, I first got this in the day before websites. I got it out of one of these sources, one of these books, illustration books, that talked about this old fisherman that fell overboard and was swallowed by a fish. And there was a name for the guy. You know, I can't remember his exact name, Quimby, or I don't know. Anyway, he fell overboard. he was swallowed, and the fish spit him out. And so, I would use that as a means of propping up the biblical story, which is always a dangerous thing to do, to use an illustration to try to prove that the Bible is true. I think that's probably bad preaching, but I told that story a number of times over the years, from the pulpit, from the classroom. I'm reading an article in Christianity Today one time where they're talking about Christian urban legends, and they talk about that, and evidently this was a real guy. But he had told the story, and so you see how it got repeated. But he later told, "No, I was drinking. I fell overboard, and fortunately the guy survived. But he showed up 2 or 3 days later, so he told everyone he had been swallowed by a whale." And that story just stuck. But he confessed it before he died. That was one of those things that just get repeated over and over. I heard one of them the other day that I first heard, gosh, almost 30 years ago, about something to do with NASA putting the first satellite in place, and they didn't calculate the number of days that it had been in existence, and they remembered that from the book of Joshua, that the sun had stood still for 12 hours, and they adjusted their calculations, and then that satellite could go into space, and that verified the biblical truth of the Bible. Again, it's a dangerous thing to use these kinds of illustrations to give veracity to the Bible. Well, that never made sense to me the first time I ever heard it, because no one, I don't care if you're young Earth, old Earth, whatever, you don't know how many days there were anyway. But this was told in this Bible study I was sitting in, and I just casually said, I said, "Guys, that's not true." And you would have thought that I said that the Bible wasn't true. Because, one fellow who was in the meeting said, "No, I saw this. This was on a National Geographic special." Now, it was not on a National Geographic special, unless they were debunking urban legends told in the church, which I don't think there is one about that. But, he was just adamant that it was true. And again, you talk about, you talk about diabolical, Wes. It's dangerous to me for people to try to prop up their faith on these types of extra biblical stories, which I believe the Bible is true, but it doesn't depend upon whether or not NASA can put a satellite into space, or whether some fisherman can get swallowed by a fish. To me, that's not one or the other. And so, I in the case of me telling the fish story all those years, I can't necessarily go back and unpreach that, but what I can do is I make sure I never tell a story like that again, even if it is a good story. I just don't use that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, I think it's a good idea as far as with preaching goes. If you have a website that the majority of your church reads, or a Facebook group, that the majority of your church looks at, or a Twitter account or whatever, newsletter. I think that's the thing. And what this does for you is, I think some people will say, "Oh, I'm going to be embarrassed if I do that." No, it's the exact opposite. I think people, you're going to have some crank maybe in some church somewhere who's looking for a chance to throw a dart at the preacher because he doesn't like him for some reason, because he disagreed with the color that they painted the walls of the church one day, and he's been looking for a chance to tear at the preacher. But if that's not the case, I think most people will actually probably appreciate, look, this guy's dedicated to the truth, so that even, he makes a mistake, he's humble enough to say, "Yeah, I messed up. Okay. It was a good faith effort to tell you the truth. I failed. Here's why." And then reiterate.
It's an integrity.
What you were saying anyway, with maybe some other source or something like that. So I think 9 out of 10 times people are going to appreciate that you've done it. And in those 1 out of 10 times that they don't, chances are you had a problem before you ever told that story with that person.
We demonstrate integrity when we admit our mistakes.
That's right. Well, I want to leave some time
does
here
that mean...
unless someone's got, Antoine, you got something else you wanted to share on this, or I was going to jump to favorite things unless you got something.
No, let's go to favorite things. Favorite things. Mine doesn't come till tomorrow though.
Okay. Well, who has a favorite thing they want to share tonight? I have one, but I'll let someone else go first if they've got one. No. Well, I don't. Did I mention this last week?
Is that a
Yes,
big pen?
but I want to
I
see it
did
again.
mention this last week. I thought I hadn't had it yet. I thought I just mentioned it, but anyway, that's pretty cool. Another thing I really like.
Wait, what is that?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Which-
This is the stylus, spelled with a Z at the beginning,
Stylus.
and it is a pencil case. It's a case for your Apple Pencil. Okay, and it's pretty cool because it hides the tip, and you roll it out in order to get it. But what I really like about it, of course, is this little clip. So I don't have my iPad with me, but I am clipping this on, most of the time I'm clipping it in my computer bag so that it does stays up instead of falls deep down in the pocket.
Is
I can
it
always see
too
it
tall
there.
for a shirt pocket?
Yeah, it probably is, but you can clip it on the smart cover. It even works with at a part of the smart keyboard where the keyboard is not. It'll work on that. So I like it, and I've been using this. You and I both, Rick, have that back cover of the
Case
that
buddy.
holds your Apple Pencil, but the little part that holds it pops out, and then it becomes flat. Well, see, that little back part has always sort of annoyed me, and so I've popped that thing out. So I still have the back cover, but I no longer have the pencil holder because I'm using this. This is another company, this company called Stylus. They also make some really nice lenses for the iPhone. It's a case that has a lens. It's called a revolver because it goes like that and covers over the phone, the iPhone 7 lens or 6 lens, and they're getting ready to release one for the 7. But it's a really nifty product. I'll show you one other real quick thing from iHome. You're familiar with iHome? They make probably mid to low level speakers, usually Bluetooth or that sort of thing. But this is what it is it's a little plug.
Dude, I was so looking to order one of those.
Yeah, and you can plug anything into it. I've got my overhead lights. I've got, those fluorescent overhead lights here in my basement. And so I've plugged this into the thing. I just wish that it had multiple plugs. That would be really cool if it had 3.
Yeah.
Hey,
But it doesn't.
Is it dedicated app or just through HomeKit?
It has an app. I was using the remote. It comes with a little remote. It also works with Alexa. So if I was in the other room where our Amazon Echo is, I could say, Alexa, turn off the light. Turn off. I've named this one my desk lights.
You just turned off lights all across America.
I did.
The world.
It also works with. Hey, let's see if I can get it.
Siri?
Turn off desk lights. Hey, there we go.
Yeah, it looks so scary when you're in the dark.
Turn on desk lights.
You should put on a clown mask real quick before the lights come back on.
So Kevin, that is HomeKit enabled then?
It is HomeKit enabled. Works with Google. Works with not Google
HomeKit
yet.
Apple's
it works
HomeKit.
with SmartThings. It works with Wink. It'll work with let's see what else.
Does it need a bridge to work with it, or can it work independently? Bridge?
No, it plugs in and has the Wi-Fi built into the plug itself. That's the great thing about it is you don't need a bridge.
Okay, and does it? So, and all right, last question, because this is actually really important and probably a news piece we could have covered at one point. There was that botnet that was that used a whole lot of folks' home internet devices, Internet of Things devices, was pretty massive. Does this iHome device allow you to change the password that's used to access that?
Does it have an administration interface you can get to even?
I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to remember that because it's been a while since I set it up. So let me go ahead and pull up the app. It has an app on your phone. that you can look at.
That's literally my lingering question because it's literally sitting in my wish list, ready to purchase a few of these.
You can buy me one too, Antoine.
Hey, only if I get Kevin's discount.
What it does is you you have to log into your iHome. You set up an account with iHome itself, and you have to log into your iHome account. There is no password on the device itself that I can think of.
Yeah, that's and then, I mean it's not a bad thing. That's part of the course normal. But what I'm referring to those who are watching, there was a fairly large state sponsored probably hack that happened on a guy who basically reports on espionage, hacking, Krebs on security, and they actually used unsecured devices like at-home Wi-Fi hotspots, these Wi-Fi plugs, light bulbs, door locks, you name it. If it connects to Wi-Fi and there's no way for you to change the password, they basically turned it into a bot to allow them to hack this person's website. They basically did a denial of service attack. They sent so much traffic to the site that the server went down several times. They actually had to take the server literally offline in order to restore things back, and then they wouldn't reinstate this person back in their domain. But I think about those kind of security pieces with these because these tools are great. These plugs are amazing. I have one here, and I've been wanting to get a few more. But that security piece is fairly important.
Well, it's as secure as your iHome account would be, and these days how secure that is, no, even iHome probably can't handle. Some guy over in Russia who works for Vladimir Putin probably can, but that's about it.
If it has a .ru extension,
.ru. Hey Kevin, what's the cost of one of those? What's the cost?
They're $39. Okay, I believe they're like $40.
Yeah, I said they're 39 on Amazon.
I'm looking at $40 an $39.95. $39.95.
Yeah, I still think all of this stuff is too expensive. Because after I got this is a review unit, just for full disclosure. I didn't pay for $40 for it. The little remote is extra. You can get a kit that has the remote and the plug, and I think it's like $20 more. The remote is $20. All of this stuff is still too expensive, in my opinion. I think the hurdle for home automation stuff is right now is price. The little bulbs, until they can get down to like $7.99 or $8.99, they're still too expensive.
Of course, the nice thing with them though is
to buy a hub and 2 bulbs for $100. Hardly anyone is going to be doing that except for the most wealthy or the early adopters. I'm an early adopter, but I'm not an early adopter.
I've looked at the lights, and there's only one set of lights that actually work. It was by Sony. Sony built them. Somebody else sells them. That does not use the hub, but it actually uses Bluetooth from your phone, which is pretty neat. But like you said, man, you're buying a light bulb for $70. That's not going to work.
Yeah, you can get them for 15 or 20. I think Hue lights now, the cheapest ones are like $15 each. But that's still, if you've got 20 light bulbs in this room alone, I've got 1, 2, 3. Okay, in my bedroom, I've got 2 because there's 2 light bulbs in that. There's 2 more in the back basement part. So that's, what am I up to now? 6, 7 light bulbs, and then our vanity in our bathroom has 6 light bulbs in it, and then there's 2 in the light above it. I mean, I'm already up to $20 a pop. I'm already at $300 just for light bulbs.
I'm looking at the remote, man. The remote is $20.
Yeah, the remote. If you've got a phone, don't bother with the remote. That's what I'll say in my review.
I'm looking at that because I'm really attracted at that, but like I said, the security piece is a piece I want to understand, and I'm to understand them a little bit better before pulling the trigger.
I mean, it's as secure as my router. how likely is someone going to be able to hack in through my router to get to this thing? I don't know that. I trust that my router is secure because I've got, all my computers here at the house, are behind it, and I've never had a problem. But you don't have a problem until you do.
Surge protection? Is surge protection built into that?
Yes, it does have surge protection, basic surge protection.
Okay.
Let's see here. Trying to remember what the figure is. I think it has surge protection. Now that I'm looking for it, I can't.
I would be shocked if it didn't.
One of you all, if you want, unless you have other questions about this, one of you all go ahead and share your favorite thing, and I'll look into that and see if I can get an answer before the end of the show. Who else has a favorite thing?
I forgot.
My favorite thing is Neighbors.
Do you plug them in?
No, I do not plug them in. I had a disaster this week where my tripod fell over and actually broke one of my most used lens for my cameras. And my neighbor and we bought a repair piece, and he's a mechanic, so he actually fixed it for me. So Mike this week is my favorite thing, which is not really a thing. He's a person, but he's my favorite because he fixed my lens. And now I don't have to go out and spend $500. Made me happy. Go ahead, Antoine. I covered for you.
No, that's good because I forgot I did have a favorite thing. Boom. Right there at the very top of that list.
Luke Cage.
Yes, sir. I did finally get a chance to watch this series. Amazing. Absolutely incredibly done by Marvel. I was very impressed.
Loved it.
Fun for the whole family.
Well, I don't know if the whole family, but it's definitely really good.
Maybe not the whole family.
Maybe not the whole family.
It was really, the one thing I will say about it, the only knock that I'll give is that there was not, most times Marvel is really good with the way they do rhythm in a story.
Mm-hmm.
There's kind of pacing to it, and I mean it becomes almost predictable in some things. Some of the series, I kind of stopped watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because the pacing just got boring.
Weird.
I guess I got used to it. Luke Cage didn't seem to have good pacing in some of the episodes.
That's what
some of
I
the episodes
said.
move fast.
It's
faster
two
than
separate
stretched
stories.
out.
It's two separate stories, and it transitioned very awkwardly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because when it got to the end of that first story, I thought, wait, is this over? And then I thought, whoa, there's still 6 more episodes.
Yeah, so it transitioned very awkwardly.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
But I will say they did a very good job with it.
Yeah,
I absolutely loved it. One of the things, Antoine, that I came out in my review is how everybody's running around celebrating how this is a truly a black show, which is absolutely true. And in my review, I went, and I didn't notice it, which wasn't to say that it was colorblind. It was that it portrayed black culture just so normally. It didn't have to go way out. It wasn't trying to be way out on the edge or anything. It was just like, this is who these people are. This is the culture. So for who a lot of apparently even some of the conversations are very popular or very common conversations that I would have never picked up on in a million years. But I felt right at home with everybody having them because it was just like, they hang out here and they say these things. Okay, cool. I'm fine.
I will say this because the whole series, I was excited the entire series, but I did not realize, and I give Marvel, they placed every analogy moment. They did a very good job. It was episode maybe 11 or 12. And it was a point where he was getting shot. And as he was getting shot, the soundtrack that was going on with bullets and guns, and everything that I felt about the despair of all of the shootings from this summer hit me all at once. Yeah. And it was the one time during the series where I can say that my excitement went to total grief. Mm-hmm. And I said, wow, for a series, let alone a movie, to shake you like that is great. But the fact that it speaks to where we are as a country and faith and world. And it was very well done. But I can say that as it was just impressive. It's definitely falls as a favorite thing.
It's fantastic. I mean, it really is fantastic. And I do think it's the best Marvel Netflix series yet. So very good.
All right. Well, to put an exclamation point on our show tonight, I want to, before we sign off, leave you with this interesting tidbit. What we are watching is somewhere in this house.
I saw that right before.
There we go. Look, a Samsung Galaxy Note.
Exploding.
I was afraid we were about to see a scary clown.
Yeah. Do you know it's actually?
Hey, Ronald McDonald took the time off just so you wouldn't be afraid of him.
Appreciate that.
But
I'm more afraid of the Big Macs. So
that was just something to end the show with, a little fun. Although it probably wasn't very fun for this poor person who's now lost all of her stuff on her phone because she didn't have time to back it up. So again, do something with your Samsung Galaxy Note 7. Like, get that
juggle it
special box. And,
sell it in 10 years.
Remember to check us out on Theotek.com. And we will be back next week for another edition of This Week in Juggling, starring Antoine Wright. Next week, he will be juggling an alligator, Hillary Clinton, and
a 1997 anniversary Mac.
I will be juggling three voting ballots, and whichever one I don't drop, that's who I will vote for.
We can say
my third candidate is next week.
we will still be here next week with more substance than the presidential debates.
I don't even doubt that.
And after your recommendation for an NC-17 show, it'd probably be just as adult. Or a TVMA show, it'll probably be just as adult. Folks, we've had fun here at Theotek.com. Follow us on Twitter at Theotek Podcast. We are out. We'll be back next Tuesday night, probably with more fun and frivolity. But for now, it is a good night.